Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard. Learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude.
Welcome. Today, I'm speaking with Randy Kinnick. Growing up in small town Tennessee, Randy was raised in a middle-class, blue-collar family where work, extended family gatherings, and vacations were the norm. He accepted Christ as Savior at age 9 and answered the call to ministry at age 19 after beginning plans to pursue a degree in architecture. Following college, Randy married his college sweetheart and they began a life of ministry service together. He continued his education with a graduate degree in counseling. Randy's ministries included pastoral ministry, educational leadership, post-secondary teaching, mental health counseling, and writing. Wow. His ministry opportunities have taken him around the world, where he's had the privilege to share the good news of Jesus in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Central America. These days, Randy leads a therapeutic foster care program in Middle Tennessee, where he and his wife, Cindy, have the blessed pleasure of living 10 minutes from their daughter, Emily, son-in-law, Caleb, and 2.5-year-old granddaughter, Charlie. Oh, I love that name. When he is not busy with his work, he enjoys spending time with his family, running, working out, and traveling. Welcome, Randy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to our conversation. And, with busy schedules, it's funny, we do these pre-recording calls and then we don't talk again for a while. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I found a lot of encouragement in the way that God has worked in your life.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like it's been like pulling teeth for us to get this worked out, but I'm so glad to be here. And there's one thing for sure, that God's work and grace in my life has been a tremendous experience.
Yeah. And you know what? I think busy people are busy walking out their callings, doing what God's given them to do for the kingdom. And so it can be difficult, but boy, is it great when we do connect. And I think it's always just an encouragement for me. Every single story shows me this different way of looking at the goodness of God. It's just slightly different way. They're all so unique. And so that's what I love so much about getting to do this.
Yeah, for sure. And I can understand that. It's I appreciate what you're doing. Just the various stories that you're highlighting and the people that you're talking with. It just shows the multifaceted aspect of the family of God, and you can't put God in a box. All the ways He works in people's lives, it's amazing to see, and what an opportunity you have to just bring glory to God and highlighting these stories. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. It's literally a blessing every single day, just getting to join him in his work. And why do we even get to do that? It's amazing to me. So I always like to start at the beginning. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about your childhood.
Sure. As you alluded to in the bio, and by the way, the bio sounds a lot, a lot greater than it is. But anyway, going back to my childhood, it was just a pretty normal childhood in a lot of ways. We were middle class family in a subdivision with lots of other middle class families, and families that were the same age as my parents and kids that were my age and growing up. And it was a great life, a great small town experience. Went to school with your neighbors, and summer nights spending, hanging outside catching lightning bugs until your parents call you in, and just had a great experience. My parents had become believers in their teenage years, but
Mhm.
over the years had sort of, I guess, gotten out of church. And so we were one of those families that pretty much, I guess, were the Easter, Christmas church
Yeah.
attenders,
Yeah.
we would go once in a while, but it wasn't really a priority for us. So that was sort of the norm. And like I said in the bio, we spent lots of time with extended families, with gatherings we would have. We would travel weekends to go camping or vacations in the summer to the beach. And that was what life was all about. Just, my parents worked hard and earned a good living, and we wanted to live comfortably and just enjoy life. So that was pretty much what it was like.
That sounds like a really nice childhood. I get to hear so many different experiences, and then I look in comparison to what I had. And honestly, it's like a petri dish. Every parent brings what they bring, and then as a couple, married, they bring something different to the table, and then how many kids there are, and where you are, and your social and economic status. It's just so many different factors that end up being your experience. And I think we carry a lot of those things along with us until we really meet Jesus. And so I love to start there, because I love to hear the different things that were your original foundation. Some of them are great and don't need to be replaced, and others are faulty and need to be completely reconstructed. And I love how God works with both.
Right.
So during our pre-recording call, you said that your family went through a difficult time when you were around 11 or 12 years old. Would you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. And I didn't mention, I did have, excuse me, I do have one sibling. I have a sister that's 5 years younger than myself.
Okay.
So there were two of us in the family. But yeah, my family, my parents began to go through some marital difficulties probably when I was 11, if I remember correctly, and it began to get really rocky, and there was a lot of turmoil in the home. There was a separation still in the home, but a separation between my parents, and that we were just as kids sort of watching this happen.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, and as they continued to their marriage continued to disintegrate, and their relating to one another became more and more volatile. And there was
Hmm.
never any, I mean, no physical altercations per se between them, but just a lot of anger and a lot of words spoken.
Yeah.
And one incident in particular that was very traumatic for me to see and experience. And this is not that I need to go into all the details of it, but basically, it was an event that took place between my parents that involved a little bit of physical interaction
Hmm.
between them, but it was a situation where I was so traumatized by it that I just like went berserk, and in the midst of that, rather than really finding a place or anyone that in the family, parents or otherwise, that sort of were there to try to help me or console me, it was like
Yeah.
I was sort of berated for the response that I had made. And so that emotional wound was really a very deep one. At the moment, at that time, I don't think I had any inkling of what the depth of impact would be, but that's something that I have
Yeah.
ended up carrying for years. And so that wound really has had impacted me for a long time from there.
I'm so sorry that that was your experience. I've shared this before, so bear with me if you're a regular listener, but it's such a beautiful visual. When we're younger, someone had told me this, and I've never forgotten it. It's like if you're an adult, you take this 8-ounce glass of water, and then let's say a child is this little shot-sized glass of water, and you take some food dye. You take a red bit of food dye and you put one drop in the large glass, it dissipates. You don't even see it. But if you put that drop in that little tiny shot glass, it turns red. And so, yeah, these wounds and these experiences and these traumas that maybe we don't realize are just one drop, but they change everything.
Yeah, for
And I'm
sure.
so sorry that was your experience. Now, how do you think this time impacted you?
Well, it really had a pretty profound impact on me, even from the standpoint of just sort of my personality. Up to that point, I'd been a pretty gregarious kid, very much wanted to be in the midst of things. It's funny, you look back at home movies that we had growing up, and I was the kid jumping in the front of the camera and making
Mm-hmm.
faces and trying to make people laugh. And I really just after my parents' divorce, after those traumatic experiences that we went through, I just became sort of withdrawn. I
Yeah.
pulled into myself. My personality changed a lot, became more quiet, and just there were a lot of inner struggles that came out of that period, that season, that impacted how I viewed myself, how I dealt with pain. Felt very alone, isolated, and this continued all the way through adolescence into my adulthood. And there were relatives who sort of stepped in and tried to be there for us, and
Yeah.
even my parents. It was not that they were oblivious to caring for us, but this was just a pain and a trauma that I carried inside, and I didn't talk about it. Didn't really know how to talk about it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so it was just an impact that mainly was kept in silence for a long, long time.
Yeah. And again, like I said, I'm so sorry that was your experience. I know I had some early childhood traumas that I never talked to my parents about. And so they didn't know to help me, and they didn't
Hmm.
really know, and I also was quiet. And it's funny when you described that you were gregarious, that's how I am now. And that's how I
Hmm.
was when I was really little before that trauma occurred. And I I'm just so happy to be back to that person. But I immediately withdrew as well. I think, not talking about, and you're a therapist, I am not, but I think just not talking about things and holding them in and having all those feelings be just such a difficult thing to figure out would it's the heaviness and
Hmm.
the just layer after layer. I think it begins to consolidate and become something so big and so seemingly unbreakable. And we don't realize what's happening because we're kids and we don't
Hmm.
compare ourselves to everybody else. It's just our experience, and we think maybe this is life, right? This is how it
Hmm.
goes.
Right.
And yeah, so I feel akin to you in that,
Hmm.
recognizing when I look back again, I didn't know at the time,
Sure.
little kids aren't supposed to have migraine headaches or some of the other things, like
Right.
um, that I experienced. And now it makes total sense. But as a child, it really does make you feel cut off and alone. And I think the enemy loves that.
Oh, absolutely. No
And
doubt about that.
I think that when someone's destined to have a calling, there's a lot of battle.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, again, I'm sorry that was your experience. Now, um, even though you remember accepting Jesus at age 9, which is amazing, I love hearing people that have accepted him so early in life. You told me that when you were about 17, you remember sitting with your Bible and truly wanting to be a believer and realizing that it was really about relationship. What did you do at that time?
Yeah, and I might say too, to fill in the story a little bit, when I was age 9, I had an aunt and uncle who lived two doors down from us there in the community where we lived. They were very strong believers and well involved in our lives. And they started taking my sister and I to church with them some. And my parents started going then as well as a result of that. And so that was the time at which I made that profession of faith.
Hmm.
And I will say, before I get to describing my experience at age 17, I would say that uh, had it not been for having at least that childlike faith when we were going through the trauma and the turmoil in our family, I don't
Yeah.
know that I could have handled it as well as I did.
Yeah.
So I really, even though it was a very simple childlike faith, it was very powerful to help me get through that. But as you said, when I was 17, I can very distinctly remember sitting in my bedroom on my bed and opening my Bible, and I think, if as I recall, our pastor, who was a young pastor, he and I became good, developed a good relationship. And he had a lot of influence in my life during that period of time, and he had challenged us to try to uh, develop a personal devotional time and that kind of thing. So I was opening my Bible and just really longing to understand fully what this relationship, or what this God, the salvation, was all about. And
Yeah.
I just remember very distinctly, as I was reading through the Gospels and just thinking about what Jesus was saying as I read those red letters, red words, and it was just like the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and it was, this is a realization, an aha moment that this is a real relationship with a real God who I could talk to and who wants to speak to me, and it was from that point that I just began to grow tremendously, and deepen that faith, and begin to make the effort and be intentional about
Yeah.
fostering that relationship.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. I think, I also went to church when I was young. I think I had a belief that there was a God, but I never really understood Jesus. I never understood what he did for me, or that I could have a relationship with him. And so it was just this, not even two-dimensional, it was just very surfacey understanding, and I didn't feel connected in any way. And unfortunately for me, it wasn't until almost 21 years ago that I really got into relationship with Jesus, and it's changed everything. That gregarious person's back, and
Praise the Lord
I've,
for that.
yeah, fully opened up to be who he intended for me to be. I wanted to mention that when you were talking about reading through and the red letters, the red words, which is the first kind of Bible I had as a kid, all of a sudden I had this realization, and I know why they chose red letters, but it just reminded me of the blood of Christ, like that these words that
Mm,
he spoke, this life, and I
hmm.
never thought of that before this moment.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I neither.
yeah, it was just such a beautiful image that God just brought to me, that, all of that truth, existed in the blood of Christ that saved us, that went to the cross for us, all that love. And I just
Hmm.
thought I should share, because it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm going to be journaling about that a little bit when we're done.
Awesome.
So you went to Christian college, correct? And what was
Yes.
that like for you? Did you begin to know what your calling in life was at that time?
Yeah, it was a tremendous experience. In high school, I was just I blended into the crowd. I didn't really do a lot of extracurricular things. I didn't flourish there. I just basically got through it. And high school, if I had the opportunity, the choice to go back and redo high school, I'd say no, thank you, I'm good. So that was not a wonderful experience for me. Although I had some good experiences during those years. But when I got to the Christian college, it was a small college, extremely conservative and extremely strict on their boundaries and rules, which probably in hindsight was a good thing for me,
Yeah.
because I had a lot going on in my inner world, and I was very vulnerable, I think, to what the enemy could have done had I been in maybe in a secular university where there were just no boundaries
Mm.
whatsoever. Um,
Absolutely. That's where I went to college. And believe me, you are correct.
right. So it was a great experience. Not only, I mean, not just from that standpoint, but more so, it was such a nurturing community of faith. I mean, where you got to know your professors personally. They would take time to pour into your life. They fostered that devotional life, that spiritual walk. Great opportunities to learn how to do ministry and how to diving into understanding the scripture more fully and deeply, and not just a surface understanding. And so I flourished tremendously. I mean, here I went from being a kid in high school that blended into the crowd and didn't want anyone to notice me,
Hmm.
to being president of my senior class, president of the
Wow.
choir,
Yeah.
traveling with our choir and our drama groups, and just having great opportunities to learn leadership and to be involved in lots of things. So it was a tremendous experience.
That sounds awesome. It sounds like your gregarious came back too.
Well, to a degree, yeah, it did.
Yeah, yeah. There's something about being in Christ, even though we still have to walk out the repercussions of all the things that we've done or are doing. I look back and, like I said, it's almost 21 years. It'll be in May, and I turned 58 in May. So do the math. I have all
Hmm.
those years of all those other decisions and all those other lies I believed and all those other things that I've done that I'm working through. So, it's just amazing to me that God uses me at all. It really is.
I hear you. I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. So what was your first ministry position, and why do you think that that's what God wanted you to do at the time? What was the root of that real ministry that he had for you to do you think?
Yeah, sure. The reason I went to the Christian college was because I sensed a call to ministry, and it was under the direction and guidance of that young pastor that I mentioned to you before, uh,
Hmm.
Tommy Maines. And so I went there to the college with the intention, I guess I'm going to be a pastor. Isn't that what happens when you're called to
Yeah.
ministry? And
Yeah.
so as I got there and began to explore and think through it and pray about it, and I thought, youth ministry is really something that seems like a good fit, something I would enjoy doing. And I
Hmm.
was also musically talented, and so I began to pursue a degree that would prepare me to be a minister of youth and music in a church. And where our faith movement is a small denomination, so many churches couldn't afford to hire two people to do those jobs, so they often would
Hmm.
combine those. And so that was sort of what I was looking at doing, and so I began to prepare for that, and the degree I was pursuing was that. And so uh, just not too long before I graduated, though, I began to really feel that maybe there's something a more specific niche here that
Yeah.
God is
Yeah.
is opening up for me, and that was sort of when I began to think about the idea of doing counseling work, and
Yeah.
particularly with youth. And so I graduated. My wife graduated. Well, we got married after I graduated, and then she had another year, so we stayed in Nashville, and she finished college. We moved to the East Coast to Norfolk, Virginia, and I took a position as minister of youth and music. And so that was my first ministry job at that church in North Virginia. And my wife taught in the Christian school because the church had a school as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, you met your wife in college, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I think any youth minister needs to be able to play music. I've never met one that doesn't. It's really, they do go hand in hand. I don't care what denomination or
Right.
whatever,
That's
because
true.
uh, I've just always noticed that music or current music is really something that opens the kids up worship, and
Sure.
it's an intimate thing, and especially if your leader is also your leader. You know what I mean?
hmm
So now, what do you think God was teaching you during that first ministry?
Well, just that was sort of that first experience of having the responsibility and getting out there and getting your feet wet. And so
Hmm.
I had lots of experiences of what it was like to interact with teenagers and to work with adults who were leading adults who were working with our teenagers, and
Right.
it was cool because they didn't have a youth ministry before I came, and it's so interesting. So many places I've worked that God has called me to. It's been sort of a pioneering thing. I've been able to go in and start from scratch, and I love that because I get to
Yeah.
make it what I want it to be and what I think God is wanting it to be. So, so that was nice to be able to go in and do that, and I really enjoyed the ministry model that I used was using mentors to work with kids and making those
Yeah.
connections for them to have a group of kids they were responsible for, and I really enjoyed seeing how that dynamic played out. So that was a great experience. I worked with an older senior pastor at that church, and so I think that was a learning experience for me as well because
I'm sure it was.
yeah. So there were maybe we had some disagreements about different things, the way that should do, and of course, the way it should be done. And of course, being a young, fresh out of college guy, probably didn't always approach things the way I should have, and sometimes we would butt heads a little bit. But I learned how to handle that, and I guess that was a
Yeah.
good experience for me. Some people skills maybe that I was able to develop there.
You had told me during our pre-recording call that you made an attempt at seeing a therapist at one point. Can you tell us that story? Why do you think you chose him, and why were you looking for a therapist?
Yeah, well, again, even though I had a great experience in college, I had started my ministry life. I'm married. We're starting a life, and things were great. We're just excited and all of that. There was still that inner turmoil that was
Yeah.
going on with me that hadn't gone away. It hadn't gone anywhere. It was still there. It hadn't been dealt with. And so I just really began to think, I wish I could talk to someone who could help me with this, and they could understand, and I could find some healing or something. I prayed a lot about it, and just
Yeah.
asked God to take it away or heal that brokenness or whatever. And for whatever reason, uh, there just it wasn't happening. So anyway,
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm gonna reach out to a therapist. There was in the city where we lived, the area where we lived, there was a Christian counseling center, which
Hmm.
ironically, several years later, I ended up going back and working for. But there was a particular therapist there that I had gotten to know because I'd referred some of our families to him for their kids and teenagers.
Right. Right.
And so I thought, I trust him. I know I'm sure he's a safe person to talk to. I didn't feel
Hmm.
like there was anyone else I could talk to. And so I went and I made an appointment. I went and I was so afraid that someone would find out that I was going to see a therapist. I even went and I paid cash so that I wouldn't even have a credit card receipt that showed that I had seen a therapist. I mean,
Oh,
that
wow.
was just how difficult this was for me. And so anyway, I went and sat down and I shared, first of all, he said to me, he said, now, I typically only work with children and adolescents, but
Yeah.
I did agree to see you. Why in particular did you want to see me? And I explained to him that, I knew him, I'd referred people to him, I'd heard good things about him, and I
Right.
appreciated that he would see me. And so I began to talk to him about, just the struggles and things that I was dealing with. And he basically, he listened, he gave me some feedback, he did some reflective listening. He sort of talked with me a little about, well, what do you want to do with this? How do you want to move forward? And or what do you think about this? And uh, I responded, and we ended the session. He said, if you want to continue, I could probably refer you to someone else in our agency or something like that. And that
Hmm.
was it. And I never went back because I just, for some reason, and this is not any reflection on him, it didn't
Yeah.
click, and I felt okay, defeated. I sort of walked away from that thinking, well,
Yeah.
that didn't help, and so I guess
Well,
maybe I just need
two
to forget about
things
that.
I'd like to put a pin two places. Number one, um, I think you chose someone so safe that that's why it didn't click.
Yeah, I think you're
do you
right.
think that's true?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And number two, the second thing that came to mind when you were speaking is that I just had a pre-recording call with someone yesterday. We were talking about this. When is the church going to normalize mental health? Because you shouldn't have felt that way. You shouldn't have needed to pay in cash. You should have been able, to feel comfortable. You don't challenge somebody about what choice they're making when they have cancer, what kind of medication they're going to use, or what doctor they go to. But we're constantly challenging people when it comes to mental health issues and struggles. And that is part of our health. That is health. And I very much could get a soapbox for hours about that.
Yeah, that you're exactly right. And I think we're getting better at that.
We are.
The church. Yeah. I mean, I know my church in particular that I am a part of now. We even had a whole service one time about the issue and a series of messages, and we partner with a local Christian counseling service that we've heard.
That's awesome
too. Yeah. So I do think we're getting better, but you're right. I mean, back in the 1980s, it was not as much the case.
No, there weren't a lot of things, but there's so many subjects, even as a youth pastor dealing with the kids who are the next generation coming up. The kids, we don't talk with them about the things we should talk with them about, the things they're struggling with about on their own, that they have nowhere to go. If we would normalize those things, because they are normal and they do happen to a lot of people, they would have some place to go. And so I think, especially in this era of all the social media and everyone's, making themselves look perfect and only giving their highlights, and they're so together and they look this way and they feel that way and they're doing that thing. And I am sure there are kids just going by the wayside. I think that's why we have an increase in drug usage. I think that's why we have an increase in suicide, is because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, you're right.
And the church should be the place. That should be your safe place for everything, because Jesus is our safe place for everything.
Absolutely.
Jesus doesn't turn around and walk away or judge us. He says, "Come to me."
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Again, another soapbox. But it really hurts me, because you know what? There's so many things, that places where I could have healed younger in church, but church was not a safe place for me.
Right.
Now, did you find that there were safe places to go after that experience to address your inner struggles? Did your wife know about your inner struggles? Like, what was that experience like?
Yes, and no, and yes. I eventually did find a safe place to go with brothers that could be trusted and safe, and were
That's
there
awesome.
to it was definitely awesome. A couple of Christian brothers had come to know that there were issues that I was dealing with, and they came and actually, in a loving and encouraging way, confronted me and said, we want to help. We want to help you, seek the help you need. And so that was at that point that I began to share more with my wife about what I was struggling with, the things that were going on inside of my head, and so I began to meet with a group of men for study and fellowship and support. We met for a year. And that was a very healing time. It was a great.
I bet.
Yeah, it was. It was very good. And it really was the first time that I was able to just be safe enough to just talk about openly and honestly about what I was going through and how it was impacting me. And so that was a breath of fresh air for sure.
I bet. And that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. When people function as real biblical community and confront you on something, but in love, and are there to support you, that's when change happens. We're supposed to, iron sharpens iron. We're supposed to be there for each other. We're supposed to challenge someone in love. We're supposed to bring something to them one-on-one. And if that doesn't work, we're supposed to come back with somebody else. The Bible is very clear on how to approach those things. So I love hearing that those men did things the way that you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And that out of that was healing in a time of refreshment, and a time, I'm sure, just putting those walls down for the first time in all those years must have felt amazing.
Yeah, it was scary, but also amazing at the same time.
Yeah, been there, done that. But I think it gets less scary every time you do it.
Absolutely. Yes, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and then we teach other people how to let their walls down, because we know it helps, and it's growth and it's healing and all the good stuff.
There's no greater preparation or training for ministry than experiencing the grace of God through others to yourself.
Amen. That is a powerful and very true statement. Now, did you find seasons when the emotional turmoil was better than others? Did you consistently have victory? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely were seasons where I really functioned well, and things were going well, and there was lots of growth, internal growth and external growth, and lots of victory, and there definitely were, and those were great seasons, and I saw God work and move in just amazing ways in me and through me in other people's lives, and so that was awesome to see, very encouraging, and just a reminder that God works through broken people.
Yes, he does. Now, you and your wife have done some amazing ministry together, and God blessed you. But you had told me, in the midst of all that busyness, there's that word, right? All of that serving, all that busyness, there came a time when the emotional turmoil returned with a vengeance. What ended up happening?
Yes, it was, and this was back in 2017, and I was in a ministry position in a church in Arkansas at the time, and very busy. This season of ministry was where I had done my traveling to Southeast Asia, to Central America, to France. And well, not to France, that was previous to that. But anyway, so I'd had lots of opportunities of ministry that God had opened up doors, and it was so broad. But in hindsight, I think a couple of things. One is that, like you said, the busyness, it was just a hectic and lots of demand on my time and energy. And that impacts your marriage relationship. That impacts how you manage your inner world, and if you're not careful and intentional and keeping yourself accountable, those things can get very much out of proportion and out of control. And so that was exactly what was happening. Things were going great from the outside, but inside I was on a spiral, and downward spiral, and it ended up with a crash. And my marriage went into crisis, and I resigned from my ministry position, and we began to try to figure out how to put the pieces back together. And it was the worst time of my life. I can remember having a conversation with my wife on October 1st, 2017, after having just gotten home from church that Sunday, and our world just fell apart, and I would say that was the worst day of my life.
And it's strange, because I've seen the theme, whether you're in ministry, as a vocation or whether, you're just trying to walk out whatever call God has on your life, where when the busyness happens, we spend less time at the feet of Jesus. And so when we're looking for relief from the busyness, we go to other things.
Mm-hmm.
We forget that he's where we're supposed to go.
Right.
That's where we cast our burdens. And it's so ironic. It's the same truth that happens story after story after story. We set out to share the gospel and the goodness that we've experienced, God's grace, right? We want to share that, and we get so busy that we forget all about God.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy. Self-included. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even in the midst of preparing Bible studies to teach,
Yeah.
to people, yeah, exactly. And you're forgetting
Yeah.
and neglecting the fact that you need that as well.
And yet God is so amazing that he uses us anyway. Like he doesn't say, oh, you know what, Randy, you know what, Amanda, I'm going to throw you away. I'm going to use somebody else because I see what you're doing. Sorry. No, he allows us to become self-aware. He is sitting there with open arms when we come back to him, and he'll still use that stuff. It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank goodness he's God and not a person. That's all I have to say.
Amen.
Now that time must have felt like rock bottom. And what did you and your wife do to try to move forward to heal from that?
Well, first of all, we had some very honest conversations with each other. And that was and we also had a conversation with our pastor and invited him into the process. And I have to say, at the very beginning, the church was so helpful.
That's awesome.
They provided funding for us to go to a week-long intensive marriage.
That's
ministry.
fantastic.
Yeah, and we went and I'll put this out there because it's a great ministry. If there are any ministry leaders out there listening to this who are going through stuff, Fairhaven Ministries in Upper East Tennessee, is an amazing ministry that ministers to Christian leaders who are in crisis.
Yeah.
So we went there, spent an amazing week of just being honest with each other, being in intensive counseling individually and together. We, interestingly enough, we read together the Ragamuffin Gospel that week, which really was just very impactful for us as well. Trying to figure out how to experience healing. So from that point forward, we continued marriage counseling and group counseling for a while after that, and we just relearned to be husband and wife and love each other and care for each other, and so it was a pretty transforming time. It became a very lonely time because we in trying to figure out what was next for us. I want to share this because I think it's important for me to say it, for people to hear it. I have no animosity, no ill will at all about anyone in regard to this. But after I resigned and I was talking to our pastor, he said, I really think it would be best for you to find another church to attend for worship, because I think you would be too much of a distraction if you continue to worship with us here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I again, no ill will at all.
No, I hear you. I'm glad that you're making that point. But you cannot have ill will and still be deeply wounded by something.
Right. So
that's still your experience. Wow.
Yeah. And so it became a very lonely time for us as well.
I bet.
From that standpoint, we found a great church to attend where we were anonymous, I guess, but that was healing for us. We were able to go there and worship and just drink it in and not have any responsibility of ministry, and that was good for us.
Yeah.
But we learned how to trust God again fully for His provision, for His healing. We just surrendered completely to His will and His guidance. I mean, God was amazing.
Yeah.
I experienced refreshing and revival. I mean, during the day, I would be at home while my wife was at school teaching, and
Hmm.
I would just be spending time with him, and I would just rejoicing and just fellowshipping with him and just praising him and worshiping and
Yeah.
being in His Word. And so that was a very, very powerful time for God to work in me, almost like a wilderness experience
Yeah.
that Paul went off in the wilderness to be taught by the Lord for 3 years. I guess that was sort of that experience for me in some
Yeah.
ways. And Amanda, as we just said to each other, we're going to be open and real with each other and open and real
Hmm.
with God. It's
Hmm.
all on the table. God, it's in your hands. We don't know what to do. We don't have a plan, but you
Yeah.
do, and we're just trusting you. I cannot. I don't even think I could name all the ways God showed up in such powerful ways. We put our house on the market on. I want to. If I can remember correctly, we put our house on the market on a Monday, and
Hmm.
by the end of that week, we had a contract on the house.
Wow. God's amazing. What's sticking out to me as you were recounting everything is you began with my whole world fell apart. And then I just listened to that during that wilderness time, how God built it all back up the right way
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
rebuilt
absolutely.
it. Yeah, that's just beautiful. And literally, how many relationships are we walking around having where we aren't completely honest? We don't have all our cards on the table. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, again, back to that mental health piece, are carrying things around that have never been resolved. They don't feel safe to resolve them anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so it creates these barriers. So your marriage, although it began in crisis, probably moved to the best place it's ever been.
That's the way we described it. We were in the
Yeah.
best place that
Yeah.
we'd ever been in our marriage. Yes.
Yeah. And so again, this is God working all things to good for those who love him. He's
Mm-hmm.
taking something difficult, something messy, something painful, and he's using it to turn your marriage into something solid and good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
have you found this new church and you've got a supportive community? I'm sure it was probably really great to not be known and to not be pulled into leading in any way, to just have that time. I think sometimes we're weary and we won't admit that we're weary. And God knows that we're weary, and he
Mm-hmm.
says, like, hey, Elijah, I see you're tired. Here's some water. Take a rest. Here's some food. Take a beat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stopping your ministry, but you need to rest. And so I think during this time, that's what I'm hearing. Like, even though maybe that was a hard thing to hear from your previous pastor, it was a
Mm-hmm.
really great redirection.
It was. It was. It
Yeah.
was. It was what we needed.
Yeah.
At the time, we weren't sure, but it didn't feel like it, but it was what we needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, where are you now as far as ministry? What are you doing?
Well, I guess there are two answers to that. We relocated back to Middle Tennessee again. God just amazingly opened doors there, and so that was cool. And we're in a church that we love and a life group that we love, and so we have
Awesome.
that community, faith community where we are serving. We have opportunities to serve through our life group in the community, and then I have a role that I have with our church as well, just a volunteer role of helping with a sort of onboarding ministry for new people who come in. So
Hmm.
that's how we sort of serve in that realm. And then my wife is back at teaching at a Christian school that she had taught for years. And so she's loving being there and ministering to those middle schoolers that she works
Oh,
with.
awesome.
And then God it just amazingly opened a door for me to get a position working with this foster care agency. And I
Hmm.
started out working as an in-home therapist, and so I would travel around to the foster homes doing therapy with the foster kids. And I just wasn't sure where that was going to go, but that was in January of 2018 that I started that position, and have worked with the agency now since that time, and God has just has blessed. I mean, I moved up to lead therapist, and from there to assistant director, and now about 2 months ago I became director for our region and another region. So it's
Awesome.
been
Congratulations.
well, thank you.
That
It's
sounds
been a
like
roller coaster ride.
yeah, it sounds like an amazing ministry though, because you're getting to work with troubled youth. I
Yeah,
see
full circle, isn't it?
redemption. Yeah, a real redemption there. Honestly, one of the things I was going to ask you next was how do you think God's redeeming your pain? And I think you've already answered it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And there are time, you don't do a lot of this in therapy, but it is
Yeah,
appropriate times to do self-disclosure, to share with the client, I can understand some of what you're going through because here was my experience. And so
that's right.
I've had that opportunity a few times to do that. And it's been a joy to see that can open up a deeper level of rapport with a kid that you're trying to help them
Yeah.
maneuver through their pain. So
Yeah,
yeah, it
absolutely.
is.
My daughter is a psychotherapist, and part of
Hmm.
our story is that my now ex-husband
Hmm.
became bipolar and then self-medicated, became an alcoholic, was emotionally all over the place, and became
Hmm.
kind of narcissistic and emotionally abusive. And so all of that ended up translating in her life to her now focusing on trauma and addiction and anxiety and helping
Hmm.
slews of other people, even learning like EMDR training and things that
Hmm.
um, are really helpful. And she has a practice, and my son-in-law just opened a collective, and he has a practice, and it's just
Hmm.
wonderful to see all of the good that's coming from that original pain that could have just been held on to. It could have been turned into bitterness. It could have become all these other things, but
Hmm.
instead, it's now not only healing for the individual, but healing for slews of other people.
Hmm.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It is. Praise the Lord for
Now,
that.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if you could give any advice to anyone listening who struggles with an issue that has them kind of locked into that shame place, feeling all alone. What would it be?
Yeah, it's almost like taking medicine, but taking it with some sugar, uh,
Hmm.
as Mary Poppins said.
Yeah,
Uh, I would say to them, as hard as it seems like it would be, uh, find that person that you think could be safe
yeah.
and just risk starting a conversation to open up at least just a little bit,
Hmm.
uh, because the enemy wants us to think, because of the shame we are experiencing, that
Yeah,
no one will care, no one will understand, and we will be shunned or ridiculed if anyone knows.
that's
And that's a
right.
lie from the enemy. And I spent many years locked in shame. I spent many nights going to bed at night praying that I wouldn't wake up the next morning,
Mm,
and that's a dark place to be.
it sure
And
is.
no one has to stay in that dark place.
Well,
Uh,
that's
it,
amazing advice, and you're right. They don't.
yeah,
It's such a deep lie.
yeah, absolutely. And it may be a friend or it may be a professional,
Right.
but there is someone to find to just start the journey. Just take a little step
Yeah.
in that journey. And I was talking I do some mentoring with young adults, and uh, I was talking to a young man the other day, and he struggled a long time with trauma that he experienced as a kid, and
Hmm.
he's just been so fearful of talking to anyone professional about it. And I just have kept encouraging in him, and he also had some friends that did, and he's taken that first step, and he said, it's been hard, but he said, I'm so glad that I did it.
Yeah. And nobody's ever sorry that they did it after they did it. It's
exactly.
It's the same thing as like becoming someone who chooses to have faith in Jesus. Nobody ever says they're sorry after they do it, but it's such a big leap. And, I agree. I think, the enemy uses the fact that whatever we're dealing with becomes magnified and distorted in the darkness when we're alone with it, the way that we see it, and the way that he's probably whispering in our ears for us to see it as well, is just overwhelming. And there's just a relief in sharing it and bringing it into the light. And Absolutely. Psalm 3:3 says, at the time that we're feeling shame, God says, I'm a shield about you and the lifter of your head. And I remember the first time he used that scripture personally with me, which is the only reason why I know it's Psalm 3:3. And I remember just the image of, my face is downcast because I'm feeling shame. And Jesus kind of coming over and grabbing the underneath of my chin gently and lifting my head so that my gaze can meet his. And in that connection is truth. And in his love is my real identity. And the shame just falls away. It's a beautiful thing. So I agree 100% with your advice. And I would suggest that too, tell somebody.
Yes.
Well, now we are finally at my favorite question. I always love to ask this. I just love the answers because they're always really good. If you could give your younger self any advice, what would that be, Randy?
I've thought about this question, and I don't know why it's so hard for me to come up with an answer. But I guess the answer would be similar to what I just said to the last question. Is if I were to go back and to give my younger self some advice, I would say find someone that you can trust and start telling them what you're going through. Open up, let someone in.
Yeah. It's powerful that it's the same answer, honestly. It really is. Because it just shows how true it is. And I think a lot of us go through life alone and cut off and suffering when it's not necessary. And we don't know any different. And I just hope, even if there's one person listening out here who is going through something that's overwhelming for them or heavy for them or distressing for them, that they will pray about who can I talk to and go ahead and do it. Randy, I am so thankful that we finally got time to talk together. I'm so encouraged by your honesty and vulnerability and all the ways that God's using you. And, in our mess and our brokenness, I really feel is our ministry. And so I love connecting with people that are willing to share and be real.
Well, I appreciate that, Amanda. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and share today. And I do pray that maybe something that I've shared is an encouragement and help to someone, that they know that they can know that there is help, there is hope, and that God has not abandoned you.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask you, Randy, if you would forward me any resources that I might be able to put in the show notes for anyone, whether they're local or global or whatever they are, including the place that you had mentioned that you and your wife went to for leaders. I think that'd be wonderful to just be able to direct people there. So do go look in the show notes, everyone, and there'll be some resources if you need a place to start.
I'll be happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you, Amanda, and you as well. God bless you.
Thank you.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. If you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.